And now I would like to introduce our next speaker, who is Dr. Hana Váňová from the Czech Republic, a specialized medical doctor in acupuncture and homeopathy. She became a prominent figure in the Czech Republic's medical field. Notably, she served as a president of the Homeopathic Medical Association and was actively engaged in international congresses with a strong belief that homeopathy is an integral part of medicine, and her contributions have left a lasting impact. Please welcome.
Moc děkuji, že můžu tady být.
Thank you very much for being here. It will now be difficult for me to speak after the speech of Tomáš. I will try to introduce you to a reality which is interconnected with what is spiritual. I'm a practical doctor, but when I studied medicine, I realized that there was something that was missing. So I started with tantric studies and other things. And since the past 30 years, I've been focusing on homeopathy and acupuncture. Homeopathy is a method, healing method, which is based on the phenomenon of similitude, as previously mentioned by Dr. Simeoni. That is something which existed in the Hippocrates times. He spoke about the phenomenon of similitude. And homeopathy as a healing method is the European cultural heritage, just like India has been enriching us by Ayurveda. Homeopathy is a European discipline in its origin, and it enriches both India. I personally know several top Indian homeopaths. I was learning from them. But that's not the only thing. 200 years ago, Tomar Christian Hahnemann was born, and he knew this. He knew Hippocrates, and he became inspired as to what to do with substances to make them lose their toxicity without losing the healing effect. So homeopathics are produced using the method of dilution and potentiating. So we measure dynamic effects, and living matter simply must react to the dynamic effects. So it is a healing method which is used to solve all functional problems. There are many in the medicine, but it can also bring support to people in very serious conditions. As long as I breathe, I live. Dum spiro spero. In practice, this may be somewhat difficult. It is a different strategy as opposed to classical medicine. And instead of a classical medicament, you use the homeopathic medicament. That's not as simple as that. The strategy of approach to the patient must be different. It is simply a holistic method, just like Ayurveda. So we keep saying that we compare the clinical picture of the patient and the so-called totality of his symptoms, which can be both physical and psychical and emotional. And we match it against the picture of the homeopathic drug as described by the literature. It describes complex effects of a drug which are known, which exist in the nature. It is animal tissue or herbal tissues or minerals upon being diluted and dynamized, they have a special effect which you must know. In practice, I always wondered how to grasp it. My living strategy is that if I understand things in depth, they become simpler. I don't like the fast food solution. I like the simplifications which stem from the profound knowledge. And that is why homeopathy becomes simpler if you understand the context. There are two roots of diseases, emotional and metabolic. It can be the stress, it can be psychism, nervous system, endocrine system, immunity. We call it the central axis, and that can cause physical disorder. Neurotransmitters have already been discovered. If the receptor is either besieged or damaged, it can influence the entire system. And
there exists the
phenomenon from the informatics which is called the energy of significance. And a key problem like trauma or a metabolic disorder can be stronger than the constitution of the patient. And in homeopathy, we're able to treat this. And for many serious diseases, the constitutional homeopathic drugs don't really respond to the constitution of the patient and don't cover the entire totality. Every homeopathic drug has two roots, psychical and biochemical. So in the Bible of homeopathy, we have the enumeration of both psychical and biochemical symptoms. Some effective therapy using the homeopathic drug is like proper setting of a computer, of a biocomputer. And I think it's a method which is still being underestimated. Hahnemann had a vision, he had an idea, which he then verified in the practice. If you went to Stuttgart, to the museum, and if you studied the history, Hahnemann was a real scientist, and you would be able to see that everything had been properly analyzed to verify this or that hypothesis. Nowadays, scientists, physicists give us answer how it works. Neurotransmitters have been already discovered, and we know that the interconnection in the body goes both ways. It's the chronic basal stress, acute emotional disruptions tend to disrupt the entire system using the central axis or through the central axis. So there is some energo-evaluative evolution, and we have to look for an appropriate homeopathic drug. Because if I get scared, if I have an acute event, the energy of this event will change my physiology. And depending on what the change is, I can choose the exact homeopathic drug. And it prevents the cascading of such events, through the receptors and spreading through the entire body. So I can stop the negative effects of such event. This is is preventing post-traumatic syndromes, which is often present in children or in adults. There can be also a stimulus which goes from the bottom and can disrupt the central axis. So if a receptor is damaged, it can result in psychical problems in the individual. So this is something which we could stabilize using the so-called metabolic homeopathic drug. And usually, if we fail to do that, the person is reduced to antidepressants. I will show you some case histories, some cases, concrete cases. Theory always has to be confirmed by practice, otherwise we wouldn't have homeopathy since the past 200 years. You certainly know aconitum napellus. It is used for the reaction, against the reaction to a shocking event. There was a woman, aged 55, who came with extreme obesity. She was indicated for an orthopedic intervention, a surgery, and the surgeon told her that he wouldn't do that unless she loses some weight. Nobody believed that she was really sticking to the dietary recommendations. She went to a clinic. She was fed with a very strict diet, but she put on some weight. There is always a history behind, a story behind each health problem. Actually, that woman had a husband who shot himself 30 years ago, and she never knew what was the reason. So she suffered with post-traumatic syndrome. She had nightmares. She used antidepressants. She suffered from hypertension and hypersaccharidose. And the central axis was completely disrupted. If this happens, you can eat a very healthy food in appropriate quantities, but you won't lose weight. Using aconitum napellus, she was rid of the panic attacks. It was a real miracle. A body is a matter, a substance, and there is a certain inertia, so you can't lose 20 kilos in just 1 week. But progressively, she became normal tended, and diabetes also reacted. You know, this is a type of diabetes which does not react to dietary measures. Patients are really sometimes very disciplined, but nothing helps. I won't describe some other cases. I remember I had a teacher whom I supported. She was an oncologist, and once it happened to her that she saw an accident when traveling on bus. It was her younger colleague who hit a tree when driving a car, and she was in a shock. She was unable to continue with her profession. She suffered cystitis, and it was extremely resistant, and she even suffered from panic attacks at night. She asked her urologist whether it can be in context with these nightmares. Well, the urologist laughed at her and gave her some hypnotics. So I managed to decipher the situation, and she was relieved of both conditions. The cystitis appeared because she had a cancer of uterus, so her pelvic area was in a very special condition. Then Ignacia Amara, a child aged 4 years, the child was never ill until it developed spastic cough. And then I remember that one day I learned that the mole which the girl had was or the hamster died, and she was given another hamster, but it did not help. This is a girl with eczema, because her parents got divorced. Then there are other cases. Nux vomica, a man who had a collapse because his friends put in his beer some kind of substance. A practical joke. He collapsed, he fainted, he was brought to the urgent services, and Nux vomica helped. What happened once, that is, he was taking MG, and despite long-term substitution, he repeated he suffered from spastic cramps, and he then once met those friends, one of those friends who put that substance in his beer, and he was inspired to go and buy Nux vomica, and it helped him. So you can see how it can work. It is really based on the substance which is the basis for the entire universe, because what is the substance in the homeopathic drug is also something which is responsible for the organization of the substance. In my everyday practice, since the past 30 years, I've been verifying that homeopathy is an effective healing method, and I do wish that those who are decision makers in the field of public health policy grasp this idea just as well. Thank you for your attention.
We thank very much Dr. Váňová for her contribution and very profound explanation about homeopathy and its efficacy.